Let me ask you about what just happened to you and other voices in London, where there was supposed to be this event, right, to talk about the proxy
Yeah.
war in Ukraine, and now twice the organizers or the hosts have been intimidated into canceling the event.
Yeah. Well, here's a report from Morningstar UK, which is one of the few good anti-war papers left in the world. Freedom of speech fears as Conway Hall cancels no to NATO event after intimidation. Speakers due to address a no to NATO, no to war rally on February 25th in London have warned that freedom of speech is under threat after the iconic Conway Hall venue was pressed into canceling the booking. The event, which was to be addressed by members of European Parliament, Claire Daly and Mick Wallace, former members of British Parliament, Chris Williamson and George Galloway, and a range of journalists and campaigners, including me, is now seeking a replacement venue. So Conway Hall, which is as this article indicates, an iconic venue, which has a long history of hosting anti-war events, is where actually Jeremy Corbyn's parents met at one such event, said that they had to cancel the event because of a, quote, unprecedented backlash against it and an onslaught of increasingly intimidating emails and social media posts. Regretfully, we have taken the decision that Conway Hall can no longer host your event as we are now unable to ensure the safety of our building and our staff on and offline. The online detractors were actively seeking to contact our funders, partners, and hirers. So we were cowards and we bowed out because we're afraid. And safety is just such a meaningless word at this point. A lot of people feel unsafe because of the violence of words or the violence of tweets or the violence of emails, but they're not willing to actually stand up for a cause that Conway Hall traditionally represented, which is to take on the war state and to take on the regime. And you know what's so funny about this is that so many of the people who have been attacking Conway Hall are the kind of people that would denounce Russia or any other official enemy as autocratic, authoritarian, or undemocratic, and point to the lack of institutions that are willing to or able to stand up against the so-called regime. And then here you have in the supposedly democratic liberal West, one institution after another caving under online pressure before the regime. There is no institution, no major institution I can think of in this society in the United States, in the UK, or in the collective West, which is willing to stand up to the regime and play host to an event like this with credible and important anti-war voices taking on NATO and a war that is escalating to the point where we are now considering the possibility of nuclear retaliation or a nuclear exchange. So this perfectly lifts a mask on the fraud of democracy in the West, and it plays into exactly what I was saying before about how democracy is managed in the West. We need to maintain this democratic veneer. We can't just openly come out and be a one-party state. But if you actually challenge the regime, you will face such an onslaught that you will never be heard from, and you'll basically have to retire to a small corner of the internet to do what we're doing right now. And I've experienced this so many times in the past few years when I've tried to speak about my work and the work that we're doing at the Grayzone.
And then the problem for us is because we have limited time and resources, now we have to devote time and energy to making the case for why we should speak and refuting all the dumb lies that are put out there to try to justify censoring us, rather than just having a debate, an intellectually honest discussion of whatever issues we want to discuss, whether it's Ukraine proxy war or Syria or anything else we cover. This is how they operate. They tie us up with fights over the right to air our reporting. And that changes the focus from the reporting itself. And this just goes on.
And just one quick final point, and I'll show the list of speakers. David Miller, you see him at close to the bottom. We've had him on before. He's been, drummed out of his university under attack by neoconservative and pro-war elements. So many of these figures have come under enormous attack, but one common thread is that so many of them were on Paul Mason's mind map of the Russia-China influence operation in London that he was creating for Andy Price, his apparent handler in the British security state, who works in the Foreign Office and deals with what he calls disinformation, which is actually just official censorship. So these figures have all been targeted officially. And the way this played out was through proxy, through NAFO, the North Atlantic Fellows Organization, this troll farm that Alex Rubenstein has covered for us, took credit for it. But they're just basically acting on behalf of the state, but doing so kind of organically. And it's depressing. As I said, I've experienced this for years. My event here at the main political bookstore in DC, Politics and Prose, was suspended indefinitely under pressure from the same kind of elements because of what the book was saying about Duma and the dirty war in Syria. And it was an organized campaign. And then our event, Aaron, in Portugal at the Web Summit, same exact elements running through Bellingcat, the Atlantic Council, and including the wife of Vladimir Zelensky, Olena Zelenska. So that's what we're up against. But the event will go on. It will go on somewhere, and I'll be there. I'll be participating one way or another on February 25th. And yeah, we need this kind of activity right now. We need a broad tent of anti-war activism, because this proxy war is entering an extremely dangerous new phase where the level of American involvement is so extreme that I don't even know if we can even continue to call it a proxy war, Aaron.